Hey, good morning, Choice Residential. Hope your day's off to a great start. Today, I want to go through some market update and market statistics for September now that data is out to hopefully give you an idea of what trends we're seeing in the marketplace. So let's go ahead and jump into it. So again, looking at September 2024, new listings were up 12.9%. So in perspective, there were 4,033 new listings hitting the market this September compared to 3,571 for last September. Year to date, total new listings is actually up even more than it was in September. We're up 16.5% year to date. So that's good. I think everybody can agree over the last 4 years, we've needed more listings. So new listings hitting the market is up. That's a good thing. On the flip side, closed sales are down. So that's not a good thing. Closed sales are how we get paid. Putting houses on the market costs us money to advertise those listings. Having closings is when we actually see the benefit, get paid there. So closed sales were down. We had 2,733 this year in September, a little over 2,800 last year. Year to date, it's basically flat. We're down 0.2% in terms of closed sales. So basically the same as we were last year at this point in the year in terms of actual number of closings. The median sales price was flat in September at $400,000. Year to date, the median sale price is also $400,000. And we've essentially seen 2 years of flat home prices. This is a good thing. May not seem good if you purchased a home over the last 2 years, but in terms of the health of the market, the prices having been flat for the last 2 years is really building the foundation or setting the stage for us to have a healthy growth in the short to midterm. So as we look at what's going to happen over the next 1 to 2 years, all the way through the next 5+ years, building this base at 400,000 where prices have been moderated is a good thing. And I'll explain a little more about that in a second. Average sale prices were up in September 1.3%. Year to date, they're up 2.7%. I like to look at the median sales price because that tells us what's happening to what most people are experiencing in the marketplace. Average price can be influenced more because we have more luxury homes being built and sold in our market today than we did, say, 5 or 10 years ago. So that can have an outsized impact on the average sales price. So just keep that in mind, but have those numbers in your back pocket because depending on who you are talking to, you may want to say prices have been flat, or you may want to say that year to date they're up 2.7%. Either one would be accurate. And then the percent of original list price to the price that the seller actually receives is 97.3%. Now remember, sellers may have price drops, and so that reduced price may get a higher percentage of final contract price. But if we consider the original list price of every home listed, they're getting 97.3% of that. So there is some room there to negotiate for many of the listings out there. Inventory was up 10.7%, so year over year. So we are remember, inventory is point in time. So at the same day of each month, they look at how many homes are on the market. And there were 8,507 on the market in September. That's up 10.7% year over year. And that leaves us with a month supply of inventory of 2.8 months. The month supply of inventory is, of course, related to the amount of inventory, but it's also related to the number of buyers in the market. So think of it as if no new listings hit the market starting now, how long would it take for the buyers in the market to absorb all of that inventory? In this case, it's about 2.8 months. Remember, 3 to 6 months of inventory is considered a balanced market. Balanced market is just supply and demand. That doesn't mean there are enough transactions happening. As we know, closings are down, so we need more transactions happening. But having roughly 3 months of inventory is not a bad thing in and of itself. We just need the gross number of homes available for sale to continue rising. And then what I always like to do is go back to the last market pre-COVID, before COVID shook things up, maybe permanently, but I like to compare things back to what it was like in 2019. So here it says February 2019. That is not correct. It's actually September of 2019. So disregard that, but this is the right data here. So if we look at inventory in September of 2019, it was 8,626. That is not that different from where we are today at just over 8,500. So inventory pretty comparable to where we were September of 2016. Supply of inventory, same thing, not too different, 2.5%, 2.8%. That's a pretty healthy market with a slight tilt towards the seller. So that's a pretty healthy place to be if we can get the gross numbers up. Median sales price, this is where we can see a pretty big difference, 276,000 compared to 400,000 that we're seeing today. Now, if we looked at normal appreciation, now I'm doing air quotes for normal appreciation, but if we considered 5.5% appreciation in our market, which is going to generally outpace inflation, and so it makes it's a benefit of home ownership in being in such an attractive market like we're in at the Triangle. But a healthy appreciation for us would be 5.5%. If that applied from 2019's median price of 276 every year until now, September of 2024, then the median price would be 360,000 and some change. Now, of course, as I just mentioned, we're at 400,000. So we still have a little gap there, a little ways to go, more than 10% to make up. But that's a much smaller gap than we had been seeing in 2021, 2022, where there were these major gaps in median sale price and where it would have been had we seen normal, healthy appreciation. So as this gap continues to shrink, then think of that as the typical homeowner or typical buyer or consumer out there in the public, what they view as what a home should be worth. Because as we get further and further removed from the spikes of appreciation we saw during COVID, and we have more of this kind of flatline median home price, then the consumers will start to catch up to their minds, what they perceive value to be will start to catch up with what the reality is. In other words, you'll hear people say, gosh, I can't believe this is all you can get for $1 million. Well, as this gap gets smaller, people will start to see value in what they can get for $1 million. It will start to make more sense to them. So this is a good thing. This gap has been shrinking over the last 18 to 24 months. And we anticipate that will continue to happen as long as prices stay moderated here in the short term. So new listings that came on in September of 2019, just under 3,900. And we had 4,000 this month, or in September of this year. So not too far off there, but closed sales, there was a bigger difference. So we had 3,260 back in September of 2019. We only had a little over 2,700 this year. So more than a 500 transaction count difference. That's 500 closed sales. That's 1,000 transaction sides. And of course, the population is larger today than it would be a year ago. So there should be more transactions. There are more housing units out there, but just the closed sales aren't keeping up, over the last 5 years. So something to continue to monitor there. All right, so I like to look at inventory levels on each month as we go through the year. Now, keep in mind, historically speaking, inventory will peak sometime between April and June, and then it will bottom out in December and then start climbing again until it again peaks the next year in April to June timeframe. What we've seen this year is that inventory has just continued to rise. So we might have expected it to peak in April or May or June or even July. But it has just continued to go up each month. Again, we're catching up from historically low inventory levels. So to see this isn't crazy. We actually want inventory levels to keep going up. What we want is for buyer demand to keep coming up along with it. So that will be what leads to more transactions. But getting the inventory levels up is part of that recipe. So a little abnormal here that it would continue climbing through September. But nevertheless, it's good to see more inventory levels as we're out there with our buyers. And then the last metric I'm going to talk about today is this new listings to closings ratio. So for those of you who aren't familiar with that, this is how many listings do you need to take in order to sell one home? And we look at the market as a whole. So if we go back to the Great Recession in 2008 and 9, you had to take more than 2 listings in order to sell one. So that meant 50% of the listings weren't going to sell when they were listed by an agent. Clearly not a market that we want to be in. Then you can see as we come out of that ratio starts to go down. And so by 2014, we're at 1.2, roughly 1.2. What that ratio means is that for every 6 houses that get listed, 5 of them will sell. That's a pretty strong, healthy ratio. But of course, that ratio kept getting better and better. And I'm saying better in air quotes because as this ratio gets lower, it becomes more and more painful for buyers. It's indicative of not enough inventory to support the buyer demand. And so we saw that number continue to go down all the way through 2021, where it got to 1.02. Now, keep in mind, theoretically, you should not be able to go below 1 because you need, in order to have one sale, you need one listing. So you shouldn't be able to go below 1, but boy, did we get close to that. And then, of course, we saw it go up in 2022, up again in 2023, to where you needed to take 6 listings in order to sell 5. And then year to date in 2024, we're at 1.37. Now, if you look at this note that I had back from February, the ratio at that point was 1.67. And I noted that we would likely see that ratio come down as the year went on because we had very slow activity in November and December of last year. And so the number of closings that we had in January and February were going to be impacted by that slow pending demand or under contract activity that we saw at the end of last year. So as predicted, that number has continued to drop at 1.37. That's still not great. If you think about a 1.33 ratio, that means you need to take 4 listings in order to sell 3. That's 25% of them not selling. So that doesn't feel great. We'd like to see that come down, and it may as we get to the end of the year. Nevertheless, it certainly shows a shift in the market. And many of the agents out there, I know you feel that because homes are sitting on the market longer. Some listings getting no activity at all. And it's a reminder that price is really important. I know we all know that intuitively, but we need to really internalize that and be able to express it to our seller clients to help them understand that in a market like we're in, price solves everything. That is the problem if a home is not getting activity, not getting showings. Now, you can improve the condition as well and perhaps be able to hold the line on your price. But the pricing relative to the condition is more important than it's been in the last few years, where buyers would just absorb any inventory just because it was there. So that fear of missing out is clearly past us. So we'll keep an eye on this ratio because this does tell us what does it feel like to be a seller out there in the market today, and maybe some indications of what a buyer might be feeling too. So that's all I got for you on September market data. Hopefully this was helpful. Feel free to watch it again. Feel free to share with a real estate friend. And until next time, take care.